Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news. This is the business of sports.
The business of sports can be intimidating or hard for a startup to break into.
We really appreciate when our owners are actually there, with us through the journey.
Teams, ours especially, have been very intentional to diversify at all levels of the company.
I think we're in the golden years for the NFL and college football.
Our demographic reach has continued to expand.
This is going to be really unlocking the streaming platform for sports fans.
Sports valuations are rising. We'll see when they peak.
You don't have to be the best in your sport to make a whole ton of money.
Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Michael Barr.
I'm Damian Sassower.
And I'm Vanessa Perdomo.
Coming up on the show, we'll talk what's next in college sports with Amy Privette Perko.
She's CEO at the Knight Commssion on Intercollegiate Athletics. It just did a major survey of Division I leaders. Amy joins us for a pulse check on the college athlete.
We partnered with Elon University Poll to conduct a national survey of Division I presidents, university presidents, athletic directors, and other campus leaders to really help inform, frankly, Congress and others as efforts proceed to build a new model of Division I sports.
That and more is on the way on the Bloomberg Business of Sports, but we start with Nike.
Now, just about a year into CEO Elliott Hill's tenure, some of his big ideas to turn around the brand are starting to take shape.
Bloomberg News senior reporter Kim Bhasin was able to visit Nike's headquarters in Beavertown, Oregon, for an up-close look at some of the sportswear company's latest innovations, and he is here now to take us through them. Kim, welcome back to the Bloomberg Business of Sports.
What is up? Happy to be here always.
Man, you've got the Nike comeback, and it is looking pretty good for the company. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it seems like it's finally getting some traction here. So Nike posted a better than expected quarter last quarter, and part of this has to do with like running shoes, right? They're starting to come back there. They lost so much. They lost market share there over the past 5 years or so to all these upstarts, right? And now we're seeing 20% growth in running, and they're starting to come up with like those big kind of product breakthroughs that they used to be so well known for, like the big breaking records kind of make athletes better sort of thing. So that's what we're seeing out of Nike right now.
We talked recently about how Nike just wasn't really the cool kid shoe anymore. Like, they're not what sneakerheads are wearing. They're not what people are excited about.
It's what I'm wearing.
Well, it's what I always wear. And I was like, wow, I guess I'm not cool anymore. I don't know what the kids wear these days. But is that something that's coming back for them now? Are they cool again, or is it all about performance?
And they're for sure trying, right? And performance is part of that. Like, you saw their Super Bowl ad this year, their first Super Bowl ad in decades, right? And it was a women's sports Super Bowl ad. They're back to these like big sports anthemic advertising. They're also working on these performance products in a way that it is cool if you develop something that makes someone win a game or a race or whatever it is, something that helps them along, and it creates this aura around the brand that people want to communicate and act with.
So you were in Beavertown, Oregon, not long ago, correct?
Yes, that's right.
That's right. So Phil McCartney, the new chief product officer for Nike.
Yeah.
Talk to us about this sport offense that CEO Elliott Hill has announced. I mean, what is the deal with that? I mean, is that bringing together all of the creative talent within Jordan, Nike, Converse under one roof? Is that really going to happen?
That's exactly right. So this is what happened after Elliott Hill, the new CEO, took over last October. He reorganized his teams around sports instead of men's and women's and however else you want to organize it. So there's like a dedicated team to basketball, right? So that's how they're looking at it. And that way they can develop products, and it's in sync with marketing and everything over certain individual sports.
So they have a jacket that inflates.
They do have a jacket that inflates.
Did you try it on? Did you fly away?
Oh yeah, I did try it on.
I mean, what's up?
It's not helium, but yeah, it does inflate. The concept behind that. Let me go through the things that they showed me.
Yeah, let's hear it. Yeah, lay it
over
on.
At the headquarters. One is a jacket that inflates. The more air that's in it, you're supposed to keep you warmer, and it does feel really strange. Like you hook something up to it and it just puts the air in, and then you push it out if you want it smaller. That's set to debut, I believe, at the Milan Olympics next year.
Oh, wow.
Some other things, they have a shoe that's supposed to make you calm, like before or after an intense athletic endeavor, like a game or a race or whatever it is. So it stimulates pressure points in the bottom of your feet in order to trigger responses in your brain.
Is that like a massaging shoe?
It felt weird. Like it really, the bottom of your feet it's odd.
That sounds like something that a lot of people would jump on, like professional athletes would be all over that. Okay.
A couple other things. The AeroFit fabric is supposed to help regulate your body heat. So that's going to go in like a soccer jersey. So when you're going through, you don't feel so hot. It's a lot of stuff, right?
What happened to the pro kids? That was my speed. And Converse All Stars and Chuck Taylors, and now on top of all that you mentioned, they also have almost like a slipper. Is the best way I can describe it. That probably will get over just with the regular folks like me.
Yeah, it's just people like science, you know?
Yeah.
and anything that can make you better. The most ambitious thing they showed me, though, was something called Project Amplify. And the way that they describe it is that it's an e-bike for your feet. And I tried it on, and it is a surreal experience. So you put on a shoe.
Are those the sensory shoes? The ones like you're supposed to feel the grass, like a tickle of grass underneath?
No. You put the shoe on, and then it straps around your calf, and then whenever you take a step, it boosts you forward as you move. And you start running in it, and suddenly, like the person running next to you who's not wearing these things is like panting and exhausted, and you're like, "I'm good."
Oh, so like running uphill, like so it makes like like an incline into a flat surface, sort of in a way.
Yeah, you can just go, and you can feel the little boost in your
Michael Barr. Pretty soon, you two will be able to slam dunk on a professional NBA rim with these new gadgets.
I would need that shoe and an AI
reverse tomahawk,
windmill, baby.
That is amazing. As I have more pictures of it. Can that be used in a marathon, or will they call that an illegal shoe?
That's an illegal shoe.
Yeah, that's an illegal. So that's my question there. This is clearly not something used for performance in a competition. So what's the point of having a shoe like that?
It could be used for a few Nike things in the past have been more for medical purposes, like self-lacing and the fly ease that you can just slip your shoe on. If you can't bend over to slip your shoe on, that really helps those people. So if you can't walk long distances and want to, like this is the type of thing that would certainly help you perform at a level that you previously couldn't.
I heard they also are making clothing so that it's focused on the areas where you perspire the most, right? So it gives you ventilation. So maybe under your arms,
it keeps you cool. They talk about. I'm not a scientist, but they talk about like the.
Sounded awesome though.
Yeah, like you have your own climate, right, between you and your clothes, and how to.
You need a charging station. You got to be plugged into the side of the wall for 15 minutes or something like that.
Is that not what already cool gear, like Under Armour stuff already is?
Yeah, exactly. And moisture wicking fabric on Lululemon pants and everything. The whole industry is working on
So they're just
stuff.
late to the game, essentially.
They have some already.
Well, one of the biggest problems that Nike had was that their shoes were not getting into the shoe stores.
Oh, yeah.
And, in that 5-year period where they were slumping, but now that has turned around.
Especially on the performance side. Like I had a jarring experience out in Portland. I was writing a story about Nike last year, and I went to Fleet Feet. That's a specialty running company. It sells running shoes and running gear for runners. And you go in and you see the Mizunos and you see the Ons and you see the Hokas and you see every brand in the world, and you ask them, hey, y'all have any Nikes here? No, not right now.
Right. They have to earn back that shelf space, huh?
Yeah, and they have to earn that shelf space back. They're back in Fleet Feet now. But again, now they're just alongside everyone who had taken their place before and all these brands that shoppers have been looking at and trying out over the last 5 years.
Was it also something that we saw from the professional athlete side, professional runners not wanting to be sponsored by them?
Well, it depends. They're all everyone wants a sponsorship,
right?
in some ways, but a common gripe from athletes at Nike is that you're just one of many people within their portfolio. So some of them like to sign with smaller brands, even if they don't pay as well or whatever the situation is, because they get to be like a bigger star at that smaller brand.
Well, for our audience, let's just like clarify here. Under former CEO John Donahoe, Nike began prioritizing direct-to-consumer sales over its partnerships with Foot Locker and Dick's, et cetera. But now Foot Locker and Dick's are one and the same, right?
They're together.
So the challenge must be that much harder. But we recently had a great interview on the show, and they were talking about the Dick's superstores. And within those superstores, my understanding is that Nike's going to have its own almost like mini store or mini section. Is that really the future of bricks and mortar retail in the sports industry?
I think with Nike in particular, as it's looking back at rebuilding its relationship with these wholesalers, they're looking for like a nice presentation anywhere they go, right? It was a common gripe from 10 years ago if you're sold in like a lower end shoe store or even a Foot Locker. If you're on a wall with every other shoe, you don't stand out at all, right? So all these brands, they want their own spaces in stores. They want like more experiential things where you enter an area and it's all about Nike and you can learn about the shoes and you can try things on, you can jump in them and test how high you just leaped in that thing. The new Foot Lockers have those built into their basketball sections. Like that's what retail is becoming, and Nike wants as big a part of that as it can get.
Now, the new CEO, when I use the phrase new, I put it in quotes, but he has fired about 1% of the executive staff, and he brought in new voices and new faces. How is that working out so far?
Yeah, everything's very new at Nike right now. He replaced most of his direct reports, so lots of oustings, promotions, new hires, and everything, just in the C-suite alone. And there were limited layoffs at Nike also recently as they restructured around these sports-based teams. So it's an all-new group up there at the top of Nike making these decisions. And so far, the turnaround seems to have just gotten into its very earliest stages. Like they've cleared out much of the old inventory that they need to clear out to replace it with all this new stuff. And now, like from here, the executives keep saying this recovery will not be linear, but it certainly has to be linear over a long term, right? And just to keep that arrow going up.
Kim, you mentioned that the jacket that they're creating and debuting at the Milan Olympics, the Milan Winter Olympics next year, but they have the Olympics and then the World Cup shortly after. How much of their focus is going to those two major events?
I expect it'll be a big focus for not just Nike, but all these athletic brands. Nike in particular, now that it's back to these instead of like these little internet clicky ads, they're going big with this stuff. And especially now that they've reorganized around sports, these big sporting events will be Nike's big sporting events as well. So the Olympics, the World Cup in particular, because Elliott Hill, the CEO, has stated that global football will be one of Nike's 5 big categories going forward, and they will be investing in that category, and that's where you go one-on-one directly with Adidas, right? That is that is that smash mouth fight that you want to see.
Well, Kim, I mean, the reason we're talking about Nike, not only the fact that you were there, but they had a great earnings quarter, and the stock is up on the back of the news, as is Adidas. But I'm curious, on that earnings call, did CEO Elliott Hill at all discuss the impact of tariffs and on their business and how that's impacting input prices and, margins and that sort of thing? Is that going to be a big topic?
He did, and it's getting worse. So they said that it was going to be about $1 billion in costs before. Now that number's up to 1.5. Nike has said it will be using targeted, or what's their jargon for this? Surgical price increases across their product lines. I expect them to defend or protect the prices of the biggest products, right? Like the white Air Force One and these really core products. They'll work as much as they can to keep them where they are. But yeah, you'll see prices continue to rise at Nike going forward.
Our thanks to Bloomberg News senior reporter Kim Bhasin for joining us.
Up next, we turn to the WNBA and a brand new show from ESPN with a focus on women's sports. For my colleagues Damian Sassower and Vanessa Perdomo, I'm Michael Barr. You are listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.
This is Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Michael Barr.
I'm Damian Sassower.
And I'm Vanessa Perdomo.
ESPN has a new show streaming on Disney Plus called Vibe Check, hosted by Elle Duncan, Chiney Ogwumike, and Ari Chambers.
Bloomberg Originals chief correspondent Jason Kelly got a chance to sit down with Elle, Chiney, and Ari from the sidelines of the USC Next Level Sports Conference in LA. And they spoke about their new show, the WNBA, and more. Let's listen to a portion of their conversation.
So, Elle, I'll start with you. Tell us about this show. What is it? What did you conceive of it, and how's it going?
Yeah, so I think that the conception of the show was a space where, we could talk about women's sports, but talk about them from our own perspective. And I think, the goal in putting Vibe Check together was not that, we wanted to be super overly intentional about, let's get the female perspective. We are women, and so our perspective on sports, whether that be a women's sport or a male sport, will skew women and female because that's what we are. So for us, it was just more about being able to unpack more stories, bringing in amazing people like Ari, who has such a temperature on the women's sports culture and has for so many years, giving her a place where she could cook and have all of this information that she's got about whatever it is, from gymnastics to women's basketball. And I think that's, the ability to showcase all of this incredible women talent at ESPN was really probably the force multiplier of wanting to do this show, because in their respective roles, we're all sort of limited to the time that we have and the role that we have, but this is a place where everybody can come and unpack everything that they know in an environment that's super warm. And I think it's going pretty well, right?
What do you think, Chiney?
I think the vibes are high.
Yeah.
I always say the vibes are immaculate.
Yeah.
You asked about the inception or conception of it. It came from authenticity.
Yeah.
So, what were we working the tournament? We're working the NCAA tournament, and they give us so much content. Obviously, working with Andrea, it's like you're going into this basketball matrix. So, Elle needed an easy way to get our thoughts, because we're going to break, we're cutting through so many different games. And so she's like, let's just do something like a vibe check, where I give out 2 answers and you pick from them and see if you two are on the same vibe.
Oh.
So that was the start of Vibe Check, because both of us just can go into these basketball crazy dark corners.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I remember the first one too. Do you remember what it was?
No, what was it?
It was,
the refs.
Yes.
The refs.
Ari knows. I asked them, I go, what's going to be the second half storyline? 3, 2, 1. And they both said, the refs.
I think Drea said the refs, and I said the referee. We got to work on our vibe.
Yeah.
Just shorten it.
Right.
But that's where it started, just seeing if we're on the same page. And from there, it was the most authentic thing. It created a greater space for more voices, more sports, and just for us to be ourselves.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes at ESPN, she's working SportsCenter. You're working 100 zillion different events. I'm working NBA. But this was a space for us to be ourselves.
So, Ari, come in here. So, tell us about that exact point, because, obviously women's sports, we're going to talk a lot about that, are rising in popularity, in viewership, in attention at ESPN and elsewhere. How is that manifesting in your work, and how do you see it showing up?
Well, because it's increasingly popular, I can change or transfer my energy from advocacy to storytelling. All I ever wanted to do was amplify and storytell around women's sports, women athletes. And Vibe Check gives me the opportunity to do that. We have this big comfy couch that Elle typically sits on with her feet up. And we bring in guests and get to just be the voice for them or help relay whatever they want to relay. And then we can share our perspectives. And I can focus on, with my great teammates, sharing instead of breaking down these doors. Yes, it exists to be the standard, be an innovative space, but it also exists as another megaphone for what we're already doing.
Right. And it's interesting that you frame it like that, because it does feel like they're in the best possible way. When you turn on the show, everybody's sort of in. There's not sort of a okay, we're going to explain to you what's going on. It's welcome in. This is happening. So just and we've been felt that on stage. I mean, that feels very intentional, Chiney.
Yeah, it absolutely is, because one, we understand that every second is an opportunity for us to talk about what we love. We don't take this for granted because it doesn't happen often. We're always a mix of people because we have so many amazing voices at ESPN and beyond that can be a part of it. So the moment we say show's on, we're in it. Elle always has something cooked up, some jokes, some scheme, some skit. I am already prepping for how I'm going to take down Drea in an argument. Ari is telling us what is the most important thing that happens in women's sports this day and communicating with guests she's known her whole life, basically. So I think we understand that the show is shorter than most, and so we want to give it the best punch ever, and that's why I think it's always.
But
it's
even
always
beyond that, us getting to know us, it's a bigger or a better space for you to know us as people. I look on the wall and I see a Stanford flag, I see Tennessee flag, I see all of Elle's ATL trinkets.
I have an Outcast bobblehead.
Literally, there are bobbleheads of Outcasts right there. Andre 3000 is right there. But it helps you get to know us better so that they have great platforms that they're going to continue to build. I'm still building mine, so it kind of adds to our credibility when we storytell around other ESPN entities.
And so, how does it fit in your minds? You know, you work across all of these different aspects of ESPN. How does it fit into the ESPN ecosystem, which feels like it's changing every day? The media landscape is changing every day. Like, Elle, how do you see it sort of like fitting in or maybe defining where it's going?
Yeah, it's actually by nature, a bit of a disruptor because it is one of the only studio shows that we put on Disney Plus, along with SC Plus, which premiered, a little bit before ours did as well. So I think that gives you like an ability to sort of merge the worlds of linear TV and digital. Ari is like a monster in the digital space. I've done more linear, although I've also dabbled in digital. You've done she's fantastic on social media and those things as well, but mostly her day job is social media. It's been really cool to see the different groups sort of come together and conceive what this would look like, knowing that it's on a streaming platform, but also like understanding that it is still TV and we still want to have the same goals, which is to educate, to entertain, to be fast paced, to get big interviews, to talk about what's happening. So I would say in the space at ESPN, it's looked at incredibly favorably, and also it's become a bit of a destination for the women that work there.
Yeah.
Like the ones that haven't been on the show or hosted yet are like, when do I get my vibe check invite, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, bring some stories. Like, tell them that you are interested and that you want to bring it to the table.
But also for the women talent, they sit down and watch it with their families. Jess Mendoza was telling me she watches it with her family, and because they can't watch it live often, they can just turn it on Disney Plus and stream it after.
There. Yep.
Right. All right, so let's talk about the state of women's sports, if we can. Mm-hmm. Fascinating moment. Today we heard a lot of what was going on. You guys had Ali Riley on, literally days after her retirement from the NWSL with local team Angel City. We had Jess Smith from the Valkyries. It feels exciting, but also like a little bit precarious given everything that's going on with the W especially. I mean, Chiney, maybe start with you. The W, but what should we be thinking right now? I mean, we're talking a week before the CBA is up.
Wow.
Yes.
I have plenty of experience with the WNBA with change, considering that I was a member of the WNBPA.
Yeah.
My older sister is currently the president of the Players Association. But with great change comes great responsibility, but also it comes with disruption. You use the perfect word, Elle. I look at Angel City, and that was the blueprint for its time and considerably for the future with what is possible. I played in the WNBA. When I went to my first Angel City game, I was still playing, and I was like, whoa, I'm literally across the street. And I'm like, what they have going with the business, the infrastructure, the support, the influencers, the investors. I brought some of my family to that game, and they're like, I didn't know this was possible in women's sports. Then you take that blueprint, literally, shout out to Jess Smith, and take it over to the Golden State Valkyries and build something that shocks a lot of people in its valuation. So one, the players have always been the best in its kind, right? Always gonna put out the best product. But now seeing the investment, that's been the biggest disruptor in the best way, because people are starting to see that you can get in on something right now that is huge for years to come. It's a generational asset. And I do believe that's transforming, above all sports, the future of the industry. NFL's at its peak, NBA is at its peak, NHL at its peak. Women's sports is rising, and we're seeing that generational change through disruption, positive disruption, good leadership. I'm excited. And it's wild because the headlines are wild.
Yeah.
Women are owning their own narratives and statements. I often say that women's athletes, they tend to have multiple degrees. Mm-hmm. They know what they're doing. They understand that their power is in the collective. It's unlike anything we've ever witnessed before. We're glad to be storytellers of it. But I do think that we will continue, and I say we because I can never say like I'm on the other side of the, journalist.
You earned that right to say we, girl.
Some people should know how it is, but I'm excited for the future because the business is booming, the players are becoming worldwide stars, and the sky is truly the limit, and we'll see where it goes.
How worried are you about this?
I knew you were gonna come back to me on that. I'll say this: every day, things change. But one thing I do know for sure is that everyone wants to keep the product on the floor. Mm-hmm. And I say we again, languages have to be spoken that are the same. I think that there was a huge moment, obviously, with Napheesa Collier putting out her statements. While that was quite a bit to process, particularly from the league standpoint, it did create an opportunity to reset.
Yeah.
And right now it's crunch time, and hopefully all parties, which I believe they are working towards reconciliation and moving forward, because this is the momentum that women's sports has been dreaming of. And it's not just basketball. This is a moment that will define women's sports by the CBA. Bigger paid maternity leave, opportunities for veterans when they're done playing. There's so many intricacies that touch the workplace overall, not just sports. So the time is now. Every day it's like a coin flip. But I do think they have the same goal. Now it's time for them to speak the same language.
Mm-hmm. All right, what do you think? I mean, you understand sort of the landscape of women's sports as well as anyone. And
she can be way more real than me.
What do you think?
As far as revenue, I remember having conversations with people in 2018 saying the cost of inaction is greater than the risk, right? And you see the return on investment in people like Mark Davis, who bought the Aces for $2 million?
2021.
It was like $2 million.
$200+ million.
It's a ridiculously great investment to have. Now, as far as the CBA, I am not as close as Chiney is in it. I will say historically they have not met the deadline, but they have come into a consensus before the season starts. Knowing what they're up against between expansion draft, free agency, and the trajectory that women's sports is right now, they want a common goal to keep the product on the floor. To reiterate,
but what's
Chiney's
the
point.
vibes from the players? No one's closer to more players than you.
The players, I'll quote NECA. NECA told me that for the first time they have a real strong foundation, that they're unwilling to waver in their foundational requests, right? But the players who can't be as... NECA's a president for a reason, right? So the players are feeling like, okay, no, we're worth this. We're not going to stop until we get the demands. We're going to demand this. But the collective bargaining agreement is a bargain. It's going to have a little give and take, but the value is there. Numbers talk. The numbers are talking, and the players are able to be louder in a way that they haven't before. Swin Cash, when she renegotiated in 2016, said we had to know when to walk away from things. We had to know what to ask for so that the league can sustain. And I think that there's apprehension on the league side with sustainability if you fulfill all the requests right now with the trajectory and the way it's growing. But the reality is, how long do you lean on skepticism before you completely make your product that's so great feel less than what they deserve?
Yeah.
To echo what they're saying, I did talk to Sue Bird recently on her podcast, and I thought one of the things that she said that stood out to her about this negotiation, and she couldn't get much into it, she is part owner, right? But she was just really inspired by the interest from the players. Mm-hmm. She's like, I remember past CBAs. Like,
they wouldn't even answer the phone for the little meeting.
She was like, they wouldn't answer the phone. They wouldn't show up to meetings. They didn't. She's like, I don't even know if I knew who my team rep was for the first part of my career. She was like, just because there was just almost this hopelessness.
Yeah.
Of like, well, they're not going to give us anything.
Or
anyway.
we're at the mercy of.
Yes, we can't be audacious enough to ask for anything. So what's the freaking point? And so for her to see the engagement from the players and to see the confidence to stand up there and say like, this is what we deserve. These are the non-negotiables. This is what we want. To see the bold movement of the T-shirts and the speaking. She said that, and I think that's probably what's been the biggest difference.
Yeah.
Chiney, is the engagement from the players who are standing in purpose and saying like, we know what our value is and we are going to speak for what's right, because to her point, this has the potential to really be a defining seminal moment in women's sports.
And players are now having ownership positions, whether that's within, being a retired player, having a team of their own, or creating their own leagues, or owning their own businesses. Like Janae said, they have multiple degrees. they're challenging, because the league is the mouthpiece for the owners. So they're challenging the conventional thought of, we cannot accommodate this because this is not how the business model is when you have them running businesses now. So it's just a stronger business sense and grasp for what the reality of the landscape is reflected when they're coming to an agreement.
Yeah, it's such an interesting point because in sports writ large, not just women's sports, you now have athletes with economic interest and economic power that literally they've never had before. Whether, today, Chris Paul, Maria Sharapova, the three of you, it's an entirely different landscape when it comes to athletes and the business of sports.
You have players that are multi-million-dollar brands that understand their worth. You have players that are launching their own leagues and finding creative ways to be sustainable, but also go beyond that, create new partnerships. And then you have players that still do the traditional mode of going and playing overseas. Mm-hmm. The options are much different than where they were in the past. And I do think that this is a good sign. When players can feel like they stand with a individual or collective value, that's a good sign for business. Mm-hmm. But what they want is to be able to share in the growth of that.
Yeah.
Not saying that it has to be equal to what we compare to in other sports leagues, but something that is proportional for what they reflect and where the business is today. Mm-hmm. And these players, that's what I loved about what Ali said. They talk to each other.
Yeah.
I'll never forget in the last CBA, Sue was on. So you know who else was listening in the background? I don't know if that was fair. I don't know if I was feeling too much tea. Megan was in the back.
Yeah,
right?
Megan Rapinoe, her partner.
Rapinoe. And they just accomplished going to Capitol Hill and fighting through legislation.
That parade was crazy. Yeah. I remember.
Then they take that institutional knowledge and say, hey, WNBA, what do you need to know?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, this is how we're going to help our league grow. We're going to take this and build our own leagues. So they're problem solving on the fly, but you don't want the problem to be with an institution that you love and adore, you dreamt of since you're a kid. You want to be partners in that.
Oh, and then lastly, the valuation of teams and what the owners are willing to pay. Now that there's a higher demand for when you bring in a team, you have to meet a certain standard of economic stability. That makes a difference too, because there's a inequity of ownership willingness to compensate the players. And I think that if all ownership groups were able to come to a consensus of what it looks like to be a successful team and what the ownership groups are willing to put into the players, it wouldn't be so back and forth. Again, I think the league is the mouthpiece for the owners to help bridge the gap between the 7 wealthiest versus the rest.
My sources tell me that's not a problem. My sources that have negotiated the last few expansion teams have told me that in terms of that valuation, that they had 3 teams that were willing to pay that $250 million expansion fee, and that if they wanted to, they could have had 12.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
The new ones.
But the existing ones is what I'm saying.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I think they're going to have to force the issue.
They're going to have to force the hand for the ones
they're going to have to.
And that is the ownership side. Yep. We've seen this in soccer, and now we're seeing it in basketball just as much, that, this is the evolution of a league, right? In the sense that, it's no longer, you guys have heard this as much as I have, it's no longer a charity. Mm-hmm. You're not doing it out of your foundation. This is a business. Yes. When Willow Bay and Bob Iger bought Angel City at a $250 million valuation, that was a business decision.
To own a franchise, though, now sitting in 2025, about to be 2026, that looks like a steal.
Yes,
absolutely. Where that's trending.
Right.
But, I do also think, Ari, to your point, there is always going to be cheap owners. It's across. It just is.
Yeah.
There are, how many times do we see the NFLPA warn their players, don't go play for them? This is just a reality of it. You're going to have huge investment from some owners, and you're going to have some owners who are cheap. And, but to her point, it's the few and far between. Those cheap ones that don't want to spend any money, don't want to upgrade facilities, don't want to do any of those things, that need to be, continued to weed out by making sure that there is a huge investment in these people. And I think my sources are telling me that one of the biggest sort of tipping points and selling points to these prospective new owners is just like any other business, as an entrepreneur that you have started, you are going to lose money up front.
Right.
You need to be okay with that. Yeah. You're going to lose money. But if you keep investing, it will come back to you tenfold. And I think to your point, like Mark Davis is a huge symbol for that. You buy, he lost money until he didn't. And now he's got the most important franchise in the W. So I think
with multiple rings.
I was going to say, and
that's why they're the most important franchise.
Yeah. In that city?
Yeah. All right. So to wrap it up, it feels like, just based on this discussion, vibes are good. Like
vibes are high. Vibes are progressive.
Yeah.
And
sitting on top of the world.
And so, what's next for Vibe Check? Like, how do you guys think about the next year or two? Looking out, does the show grow? Does it spin off? Like, what is the grand Vibe Check plan?
Oh man,
we both looked at
You're sitting right there in the middle.
Why you gave me the middle seat. Yeah, I mean, I think the goal is always to, at least from this side, and like that question may be better answered by a marketing executive or one of our executives.
But what do you want it to be?
For me, I care purely about making sure we do the absolute best version of the thing that we have before we talk about expanding and spinning. And I am completely driven by content. And I am also a bit of a perfectionist in that, like, until I feel like we have executed and nailed this thing, and we're still figuring it out. I mean, Vibe Check premiered in May. Like, it's just been around for a few months. We're still getting our sea legs under us. We're still figuring out combinations because, again, we do have so many. We're still figuring out audience metrics. I mean, something can be sold, and that's amazing. Like, we want it to be sold, but it takes some time to get research, to figure out what people are resonating with, like what topics they're interested in. And so for me, I'm far less interested in like what's next for Vibe Check in terms of scale, and much more in like how we each own our little space of Vibe Check and continue to try to make it authentic and real and a place that's a destination for families to come. And learning over the last few months what our demos are, what our audience looks like, that to me is information that we'll use moving forward.
Can you add to that?
Mic drop. That's what I says.
Well, I appreciate all three of you spending some time. This is really fun to chop it up. Vibes are great.
Absolutely. Vibes are great. Wait, I feel like we should have done a vibe check with you.
We should.
I know.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Ooh, okay, I got one.
Okay.
Georgia or Georgia Tech?
Georgia Tech. Sorry.
You went to Georgia, though.
I didn't go to Georgia.
You're just a Georgia fan.
I'm a fan of, like, I have a lot of family from Georgia Tech, which is probably where I tend, and then I have a lot of family from Georgia.
So you
just picked one.
I'm split.
No,
so I
clearly
got
not.
Georgia Tech.
Okay. Right. Georgia State or Georgia? I'm just kidding.
Georgia Southern.
That's Elle Duncan, Chiney and Ogwumike, and Ari Chambers speaking with our own Jason Kelly in LA at the USC Next Level Sports Conference.
Elle, Chiney, and Ari have a new show from ESPN called Vibe Check. You can catch that on Disney+.
And if you want to hear more of their conversation with Jason, we've got it ready for you on demand on our podcast feed. Subscribe now on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Up next, we turn to college sports and a survey of some of its top leaders across the country.
For Damian Sassower and Vanessa Perdomo, I'm Michael Barr. You are listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports, Bloomberg Radio around the world.
This is Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
Thanks for joining us on the Bloomberg Business of Sports. We explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Michael Barr.
I'm Damian Sassower.
And I'm Vanessa Perdomo.
The Knight Commssion on Intercollegiate Athletics is an independent group of thought leaders that have played an active role in shaping collegiate sports.
Recently, the Commission did a survey of Division I leaders nationwide to take their temperature on all the big changes in college sports over the last few years.
Huddle around the set, gang. Joining us now to discuss some key takeaways from the survey and more is Knight Commssion and Intercollegiate Athletics CEO Amy Privette Perko. In a major story that broke involving an NBA probe into illegal gambling in poker games that were rigged prop bets. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver has a very big headache to deal with, Amy.
Well, sports gambling certainly is an issue that's impacting the entire ecosystem of sports in America. So it's certainly terrible when we hear about scandals. And I think, our country, as sports gambling has become, more widespread, we're going to have a lot of issues that we're going to have to wrestle with. And even in college sports, just last month, 13 Division I players were ruled ineligible due to issues related to gambling. But then at the same time, the NCAA just changed really historic rules that prohibited college athletes from gambling on professional sports. And so that's been lifted. So, there's a lot of bumpy roads ahead, I think, as it relates to sports gambling and how it's going to impact the integrity of games.
It's a bumpy road ahead, everything that's going on with sports gambling, and we'll take a deeper look at that later on. But right now, we're here to talk to you about how college athletics is working and the bumpy road ahead for them. Because quite frankly, there's a lot going on in college athletics as well. The Knight Commssion had a survey went out, surveying athletic directors and team presidents and, athletic presidents. Can you tell us more about the commission and what you're looking to find in that?
The Knight Commssion is an independent, really think tank that focuses on college sports policies with a priority on policies that really are directed toward athletes' education, health, safety, and their success. We partnered with Elon University Poll to conduct a national survey of Division I presidents, university presidents, athletic directors, and other campus leaders to really help inform, frankly, Congress and others as efforts proceed to build a new model of Division I sports. There have been, historic changes in college sports. This year is the first year ever in its history that schools, Division I schools, can provide direct NIL compensation to athletes directly for their name, image, and likeness. So athletes are receiving, compensation well in excess of the traditional athletic scholarship. And so that's been a big change. And we've also seen lots of changes around transfer rules and now, you see more movement and more transfers. We were assessing how leaders feel about all these changes.
There were a lot of questions that you asked during the national survey of Div 1 leaders. There were things ranging from the Olympics to the House versus NCAA settlement terms and all that good stuff. But I do want to ask you about the transfer portal because as a spectator of college sports, there's a case to be made that it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it seems like the results overwhelmingly say that the transfer portal has had a negative impact on Div 1. Talk to us a little bit about what's driving that.
Our survey was conducted after these new rules went into place on July 1. And we also earlier conducted a public opinion poll. And there's a difference between how the public views the differences in transfer rates and transfer rules and the Division I leaders. But overwhelmingly, Division I leaders identified the transfer rules as a big problem. 9 in 10 campus leaders said the transfer portal is having a negative effect on Division I sports. And 84% strongly opposed the current rules. Now, the current rules allow athletes to transfer and be immediately eligible an unlimited number of times. Of course, those transfer athletes still have to meet eligibility rules, so they still have to show they're on progress to achieve their degree. But one of the other issues that's not captured in those questions is how NIL compensation and the continuing recruitment of athletes using NIL compensation is factored into that.
One thing about the study that I really like, and a huge majority, 93%, believe that universities must continue offering Olympic sports such as gymnastics, swimming, track and field, and others not associated with generating revenue. Can you expand more on that?
The impact of kind of the new rules and allowing institutions to provide NIL compensation to athletes has raised some questions about the long-term impact on non-revenue sports, or as we refer to them as the collegiate Olympic sports. As institutions put more money into football and basketball, there's concern about what's in place to make sure that we still have a broad-based opportunities for all athletes. And so from the Knight Commssion's perspective, the opportunity is a core value, but there's also an impact on the Olympic success of the U.S. The U.S. is incredibly and has been incredibly successful at the Olympics. One of the most kind of misunderstood facts in sports is that our country is unique in the world in that our Olympic development system does not receive any federal funding. And so the Olympic success has really been dependent on our collegiate sports system. And so there's a potential impact on, number one, opportunity, but then also podium success at the top level of the Olympics. That's part of this survey, looked at how do Division I leaders feel about the importance of the collegiate Olympic sports. And then secondly, are there kind of new funding mechanisms that should be pursued? And on that point, with regard to the funding, nearly 3/4 of leaders favor using some type of federal funds to help finance the collegiate Olympic sports and the development of future U.S. Olympians. And as it relates to sports gambling, kind of an interesting finding as well was that more than 80% of Division I leaders supported the use of some kind of federal tax on sport gambling operators to also provide a new funding mechanism for collegiate Olympic sports.
I think it's interesting, though, that you brought that up because obviously you had said that we don't get federal funding for our NGOs of Olympic sports for them to really. So they're really relying on corporate sponsorship and things like that. So I'm assuming that college athletics are going to have to start doing that specifically for Olympic sports. They're going to have to start getting specific corporate sponsorship because those are also not the sports that are getting NIL deals that we're seeing. But also I'm interested to another point that brings me to is how it impacts women's sports, because that's also on the Olympics. I was a women's soccer player, a college women's soccer player, and all of this just really comes to fruition for me, which quite frankly, one of the points that struck me was how I believe it was 3/4 of college athletic directors said that they believe that revenue sharing should basically go to the sports that make money, which obviously makes sense because that's what revenue sharing means. But that's not really the majority of Olympic sports or women's sports, really. So how does that impact Title IX and gender equity on college campuses?
No, it's a great question. And I think, this era and what's now being allowed with the NIL compensation. And again, this is institutional NIL compensation that I'm speaking about. Of course, athletes can also still receive the third-party NIL compensation from, the traditional endorsement agreements that they might have with companies. But with regard to the institutional athlete NIL payments that are now allowed, it really does raise one of the most complex legal and philosophical challenges ahead for everyone, because there's a disagreement, frankly, on whether institutional payments should be based on how much money an athlete sports generates, or whether it should be included in the amount of institutional financial assistance that's provided to athletes, which, the latter is subject to kind of the Title IX guidance on how that money, institutional money, should be awarded. Mm-hmm. And as right now, the Division I athletic programs operate as a part of the nonprofit educational mission of the university. The answer to your question is not clear at all. Our survey showed that, leaders, presidents, ADs, faculty athletic representatives, senior women administrators, when you group all their responses, it's really mixed views. But when you look at just the athletic directors, more than 3/4 said, these new institutional payments should just be based on how much money the athlete sport generates. I do expect that there will be significant litigation on this issue moving forward.
I'm curious, what did the commission find as it relates to, federal oversight, some sweeping law? Because right now NIL is really governed at the state level, yeah? And so, what's the consensus there? Should, some of the rules governing, pay for play be coming from the state level, or should there be some sweeping federal legislation at this point?
The survey of Division I campus leaders showed overwhelming support for some type of federal legislation that would help regulate NIL compensation. There currently does exist a patchwork of different state laws about NIL compensation. So leaders really want to see some stability and some uniformity across the board. And so trying to achieve federal legislation has certainly been something that the NCAA and its institutions, member institutions, have worked very hard on. There are two different pieces of legislation, one in the House of Representatives and one in the Senate, that have been introduced. The bill in the House is referenced as the SCORE Act, and that does try to achieve some national standards on regulating NIL, as well as the bill that was introduced in the Senate would do something similar regarding NIL compensation. So there's widespread agreement that kind of legislation is needed, and then to allow, the national rules to supersede any conflicting state laws.
Our thanks to Amy Privette Perko for joining us. She's CEO at the Knight Commssion on Intercollegiate Athletics.
And that does it for this week's edition of the Bloomberg Business of Sports.
What?
I know. If you missed anything, check it out on demand on the Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast. Find that on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe.
For my colleagues, Damian, Sassower, and Vanessa Perdomo, I'm Michael Barr.
Tune in again next week for the latest on the stories moving big money in the world of sports.
Hey now, you're listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.
Stay with us. Today's top stories and global business headlines are coming up right now.